Hello, I'm Brian. Today we'll be talking about garlic chive, how it relates to me. We'll harvest some and talk about how it's grown. In Asia, garlic chive is a very used crop. In China, they use it in dumplings and stir fries. They use it in Korean cuisine and also in Vietnamese cuisine, and I suppose maybe other Chinese influenced cuisines as well. I was surprised to find garlic chive on a bun um, at California Adventure. They had a garlic chive bun where they baked strips of garlic chive into the bun. So it looks to be an upcoming crop, and it's kind of slow to take off, but we'll see in the next couple years if it becomes a mainstream crop. But for now, it's a really delicious, very practical, easy to grow crop, and it's part of my everyday or often use in my lunches where I make noodle soup and include it. As far as my culture, I'm Chinese, or I'm multi-ethnic, and one of my ethnicity is Chinese. And more specifically, you may hear of a group called Chow or Teochew, and we have a very iconic cake. It's called a garlic chive cake, and sometimes it's called a leek cake because garlic chive is sometimes confused for cake. I'm going to harvest some to make that cake for this weekend, and also it can be used in a pork and chive dumpling, which is something I always like to order when I go out to eat. But first, let's talk about garlic chive as a plant. In some areas, it's considered an invasive species, and we'll see why. It's a very easy to grow plant, and this was a plant that I came across its seeds during a trip across the country, and we visited the Denver Botanical Gardens, and in the gift shop there was a little seed rack, and I was looking through them and I was surprised to find garlic chive seeds. And growing garlic chive, I've discovered that it takes about 2 years when you grow them from seed before you can get a good harvest. So the best way to grow garlic chive is to grow them from rhizomes, which you can divide up at the end of the season, and we'll see the rhizome in a bit. So let's go and harvest the garlic chive, and then we'll dig them up and show you what they look like underneath. Before we harvest the garlic chive, let's talk a little bit about them. They're part of the allium family, which includes your onions and your garlic, and their seed all look alike, so it's very difficult to distinguish them by looking at their seeds. They have these really pretty florets at the top, and they bloom once a year around September. So they make a good ornamental plant. You can plant them as a border plant, and just kind of have to be careful because they can be invasive. But I think if they get out of control, they're pretty easy to dig up and get rid of. And as far as growing them, they're like green onions. They'll grow back when you harvest them, and I haven't been harvesting them. And as a result, you'll get these dried up leaves, and that kind of makes it more laborious when it comes to the harvest because you'll have to clean them out before using them. So, like scallions, it's best to cut them as they peak and let them grow back. That way, the leaves don't get a chance to dry out and you have to clean them out. So, when it comes to harvesting garlic chive, you harvest them like green onions. So, you cut them at the base. You can cut them ground level or just a little bit above ground level. And as far as growing garlic chive, they like well drained soil, but they can pretty much handle anything. If you give them well drained soil, you'll end up with pretty wide leaves, big, tall, and wide leaves. They also like a lot of nitrogen, so a lot of compost and a lot of sun. But you can see elsewhere where they're planted in the ground and in partial shade, they'll grow. But if you want these big giant ones, put them in the sun, well drained soil, and lots of goodies for them. So here's all this stuff again, and having to clean them out is not fun. It's once you get to these little tiny ones, you have to go in precisely and pick them out. So always cut them back, unless you want the flowers. Unless you like seeing lush growth in flowers. What we're looking here looks like about 5 plants in a cluster. Well, this is underneath here is one rhizome that was planted earlier in the year, and it's divided up into 5. So these guys divide really quickly, and their growth rate is almost exponential. After a couple years, you'll end up with a lot of garlic chive. But we'll look at it later and see what it looks like underneath. So this is what the planter looks like after the garlic chive has all been harvested. They don't make good companion plants, and we'll see why in a second. The roots are really tight gripping, and they cluster, and they will steal away nutrients from other plants. So when you're harvesting garlic chive, always cut them, and also if you want to remove them from the ground, go under and dig them out, because otherwise if you pull, they will break off part of the rhizome, and the rhizome will be damaged if you're trying to preserve the plant. Or if you're trying to get rid of the plant, you'll leave part of the rhizome and the plant can potentially regrow. Here is a little tiny seedling that grew over the course of this year, and this is what it looks like after a year of growth. So here's a good illustration of why it takes 2 years for the plant to grow to a harvestable crop. So what I like to do at the end of the season is to dig up the rhizomes. That way we can divide them and continue to allow them to grow back to the size that we just saw them at. If you like to have them grow in tight clusters, you can leave them in here and they'll just grow tighter and tighter, but the leaves might get smaller and smaller, which is also nice because you can have a little tiny ornamental grass clump. But for our purposes of growing them as a crop, it's best to dig them out yearly and divide them up. I suppose it's easier to dump the whole entire container onto maybe a tarp and get them, because they're really bound in there. And here is the rhizome, and so they grow and they divide. So what I like to do is break them up, and so sometimes they shake apart, sometimes they snap off. This is basically one big old glob of massive roots in here now. Ugh. And this is one of the better soils around. You can see it's nice and loose and dark. There's a lot of compost in here. Well, now that we got a corner cleared out, I think we can get under there and dig them out. Make sure you go under where the roots are so you don't chop into the rhizomes. Okay. And we don't have to worry about preserving the roots. You may actually want to just break them off or cut them off later when you plant them. Anyway, so chopping the root is not a problem. Just make sure you don't chop the rhizome. And I like to leave the roots back in here. It helps with keeping the soil loose. Here's our line of garlic chive rhizome. We got quite a bit, and always end up with quite a bit. These rhizomes are pretty old now. I planted these guys back in May of 2012 after getting back home from our cross country and back road trip. And look how big the rhizomes are now. They're pretty big. And so far they get bigger and better every year. And I wonder if these guys will ever peak. But we'll find out. As far as planting them, they're pretty easy to do. I plant them about 2 inches apart. Pick the big and best rhizome. This one has 4 on it, kind of a lot per rhizome, but it looks like it'll be okay. And you plant them just like you found them, with the soil just covering this bit of the rhizome. It's okay if you plant them a little bit deeper as well. They're pretty self-managing plants. Here we have an example of one rhizome that we're going to break up into 3. So they just kind of snap off. And we'll plant them. This one, let's break them up because there's quite a bit of competition within itself. So we'll save this guy for someplace else maybe. We want to pick the best ones and replant those, because that's going to be your crop for next year. So space them about 2 inches, maybe 3 apart, because the rhizomes will divide and you want to give them room so that they're not competing with themselves. And here I didn't cut the plant back enough when I harvested, so I'm going to come back later and cut that off. You can, if you want, break them into one stalk. Okay, we have 20 plants in the planter. Now there are about 60 or 80 plants to replant or give away. So this is garlic chive for you. Once you start with a few, start with 5, and before you know it, you'll have a whole field of them. So I have myself a harvest of garlic chive, and I normally like to get them before they go to flower, or if they go to flower, I like to let them continue on and go to seed. But I have quite a bit of garlic chive now, and I don't need to save the seeds or hoard them, because I usually hoard my seeds even though I know I can't get around to planting them. So I'm trying to be good this year and not have too many seeds left over. In addition, I have a bunch of these rhizomes to plant, and I maybe will plant them along the edge of the grass and continue them. And I know that some of my friends are going to want to come and pick this up and try to grow it for themselves. I wish I can send it to you guys. I just don't have the time to make it out to the post office and send it to everyone, because I want to spend as much time with my kid as possible, and being in the garden sometimes kind of takes away from that time. But if you haven't tried garlic chive, you can probably find it at the Asian supermarket, and it's good in a scrambled egg. So just put a little bit of it. It's quite strong. If you like garlic, then you're gonna really love garlic chive. It's got a really pungent flavor, and it has a lot of fiber, so it's also good if you need fiber in your diet. If you go to dim sum restaurants, be sure to hear or ask for chive dumplings. They have a steamed dumpling, and it's really tasty. It's got a really nice chewy skin around it, so you can give it a try there. Well, I guess the street sweeper is behind me, so that's a good sign off the time. Thanks always for coming out and joining me out here and gardening with me. So until next time, I'll catch you later, and happy gardening. Hey, if you saw the Richter's herb unboxing, here are how a couple of the plants are doing. Sandwiched in between the turmeric is this cardamom plant. It's been transplanted into this 3-gallon container, and here is one of the newer leaves, and here it is side by side with a turmeric. And right in front down below is our forsythia, and the leaves that it came with have since dried up, but we have new leaves now. And that's the update on those two plants.